Hello, everyone. Welcome to my live stream. I am going to be sewing masks today. I was sewing masks yesterday, and I'm going to pick up where I left off. I'm making larges, and I'm going to try to do some smalls today. Yesterday, I cut out and finished the seams, I finished the raw edges of the shells for the masks and the linings. So I have a bunch of linings here and a bunch of shells here that I'm going to continue with. They have the nose pieces in, so that is the top, and then the bottom part needs to be hemmed. So I'm just going to keep going. I have made nose pieces with tape and wires. So these have been all pre-cut, and I'm going to put them into the seams as I sew. And then after that, I'm going to tack down the sides of the wire so that it doesn't slide around. And then I'm going to put on the elastics for the ears. So I have a stack here of smalls that have been sewn together, and the raw edges have been finished, so that these are like they're not done, but they're like started. So I'm going to just keep going. If you guys have questions, please type them in the chat, and I will check periodically and answer the questions. And yeah, so now I'm just going to get started and do a little sewing. So here I'm going to make this close. All right, so I have set up shop here on this table so that I can have everything in one spot. Like, this is a towel that I'm ironing on and everything. So it's not my usual sewing setup, but let's see here. Okay, so these are all sewn. I've done the hem on the top, and here is the nose bridge and the hem also on the bottom. So I'm just going to cut them apart, and the next step is to tack the nose piece. This one still needs to be hemmed. Let's see here. Good. These ones are good. All right, these two need to be hemmed still on the bottom, so I'm going to just do that. Let's get my foot going here. So I have used the zigzag stitch to finish the edges on these. If you have a serger, you can also use a serger. But you can see here, this is the zigzag stitch. This is something you can do if you don't have a serger. So if you just have a machine, you can put it on the zigzag and just feed it through the machine, and it will bind the raw edge to keep it from fraying. So that's like a kind of like a home sewing technique. If you have a serger is more of something that like a factory would have, where it has like 4 or 3 threads and it's going up and down and around, and you know, it's great, but it's another piece of equipment. So a lot of people don't have that. If you're sewing just with a straight, like a regular home machine, most of them always have a zigzag stitch. So you can finish the edges of anything you're sewing with that. And so when I don't have a serger, or it's broken, or I don't have time to change the threads or something, sometimes you can just use the zigzag machine. So zigzag stitch, excuse me. Okay, great. So now these are caught up with the others that I have here. So the next thing I'm going to do is put bar tacks on the sides of the wires. Here's the wire here. So I just am going to feel for it and then sew straight and then go backwards and then come forwards and then backwards. So I do it like 4 times. And I just try to, again, you have to be careful. You don't want to break your needle. So there's one. Here is an example. Now, these need to be clipped pretty carefully. A lot of clipping. Oops. Sorry. Okay. Here is a bar tack example. So I'm just going to do that on the other side now, and I'm just going to do all of them that way. All right, so I'm just going to do them one after another here, and keep them all on a line. So I'm going to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to do 6 in a row. And so I'm just going to take it off and then go to the next. I'm just going to do all the right sides. And next. This one got bent. Okay. This one I'm going to trim here. See a little. It's good to trim as you go so you don't have to trim a million things when it's done. Okay, on to the next. And I'm just using a regular foot. So it's not like super flush to the wire. I'm just getting it as close as I can. So there it is again. Just gonna get in there and trim. You want to trim it close, but you don't want to like cut it. So gotta be careful. All right, so now I'll just do the other one, the other side. I'm gonna have to trim all these. It's all about the details. Trimming, ironing, pinning. I don't know if you can see, I have some red dye in my hands because I was doing tie-dye this morning. Red, white, and blue for 4th of July. So stay tuned for that. I still have to wash it and everything, so that's coming. But I think it turned out really cute. All right. So these are both tacked on both sides. This one's light, so you can't see very easily on that one, but this one too. So I'm just going to do the rest of this on the other side. Okay, one more. So I'm just doing straight stitch and I'm going back and forth to really secure the wire that is encased in that top hem. So, because you don't want the wire to like slip down. Fall out. And all right, that is great. So next, I'm going to put on the ear elastics. So I have them pre-cut. These are 6.5 inches long. And I put them on like this. I want to keep it flat. And I'll just sew it, I'll sew it like this. I'll back tack, sew all the way down and back tack so that it's like a solid. So this is stay stitched essentially. And then these are really solid on there because I don't want them to fall off. So I just move, I try to line it up with the hem, which is usually about 1/4 inch. And I just go back and forth on it, and then I go straight with lining up the edge with my foot, and I take my elastic here and I put it flat on the other side. Now you got to sometimes pull. There we go. Put down my needle and place the elastic where I want it. Okay, it's been sewn and I'm back tacking. I'm back tacking, back tacking, back tacking. I'm going forward. Now this is going to go inside of the seam. So it doesn't have to be super pretty. It just needs to be nice and strong. That's my goal. So it's going to go like this. And you're going to attach the lining here. And this is going to go behind. So this is going to be a clean edge. And I want this to, the reason I go back and forth is to make it super strong. So you just want to make sure that when you pull on it, it's not going to snap off. Let me see if I can move you a little closer for this part. Okay, yeah, that's good. So I'm just going to keep going on these. You do one on each side for each mask. Oh, sorry. You do it on the right side. Duh. All right, so then I go back tack, forward, back, back, and now I'm going to bring the other side in, and there. That one got caught in there just right. Okay, good, good, good. On to the next. Okay. So I'll just line them up like assembly style here. this one didn't want to go in, so I'm just going to take the foot up and then put it in and then put the foot back down. And come back, tack. All right. I'm going to make sure it's flat. You don't want it to twist. That's happened before, so it's annoying. Seam ripping elastic is like the worst. All right, one more on this side. So all this stuff is going to go into the seam. So I'm just making sure it's going out. Okay, so here is this little line of the ear elastics are on this one side. So now I'm going to turn them around and do the same thing. So after we're done with all these, I'll cut them apart and put them with the lining. Okay, so here they are. They have 2 elastics on them, and they're going to get the linings put on next, and then they're going to be one step closer to being done. So I'm going to trim. Okay. So now we have them all clipped. I like to clip all the threads as I go, just to make sure they're nice and tidy. All right, so now I have, push this back here. Now I'm going to pin the linings on. So I want to make sure that the lining is on the right direction. So the top of these linings, the top is longer. So when you put it down, the top kind of spans out further. So that's just one way to kind of make sure you're doing it right. You don't want to pin it upside down, which I've done. So what I do is I take my lining and I put it on top, and oftentimes with linings, they don't fit perfectly. They're not really supposed to fit perfectly. They are, usually like a tiny bit smaller, like 1/8 of an inch or something. So I will just make it the best I can. And often too, they are a little bit bigger. So like, I don't know if you can see this, but that is happening. That's fine. What I do is I just make a little pleat like that. And I just pin it together. So when I'm pinning something, especially a lining, I usually do one side, the other side, then the middle, because these are the most important parts, and anything in the middle can either be stretched or sort of worked in, you know, so you don't have to have it be perfect. Well, it never will be. That's the truth. So especially with a curved thing, I really feel like making these masks is like sewing like a bra or something. A lot of curves, a lot of small spaces. So see this one here, I'm going to just ease in. Just make sure the shell is straight. And I'm going to put there we go. So there it is. That's that one. And let me do a few more here. This is the top. This is the bottom here. The bottom for the men's are than the women's. This one I'm going to actually. So if it's looking like it's too small lengthwise, it's sort of the same concept I was talking about for the edges. Like you just pin it. I'm going to pin this one like a little bit in. I'm going to leave a little bit of the shell out, and then I can trim that and then zigzag this edge later. You just want it to be as close as possible. And if you don't want it to be too tight, like you don't want it to be too small for the shell, but it's okay if it's a little smaller. That's going to give it that curve. So yeah, this side here I did a little bit, and this side here I did a little bit. So that's not going to make enough difference that it's like pulling. It's going to be fine, and it'll fit nicely. And then also, once these are done, they kind of stretch to fit your face. And then they actually stretch out. And then when you wash them, they kind of shrink up a little bit, and sort of they have a life of their own because they're cotton and they're on your face. So they're getting heated up. All right, let's do another one here. Let's see. Let's do this here. Okay, so there they are. I have 3 here, and I'll just sew these up right now. These ones I'll do later. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sew a straight stitch across this way. And I want it to be enough so that all of this gets tucked into the seam. So I'm going to do like a solid 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to back tack. This is like one of the really important seams. You want it to be strong. Okay. Now, I don't like to sew over pins because it's dangerous. Okay, on to the next. All right, so here they are. They're sewn now. This is the other side. So all this ugly stitching is going to be tucked inside. But this ugly stitching is what keeps it strong, so it's important. So now I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. All right, so they're both sewn now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to zigzag just to like finish the edges. And I'm going to trim them. So, let's see here. I'm going to just trim this way. Like this one, I'm going to trim. These other ones aren't too bad. And a lot of these steps with like the zigzag and the back, like not the back tacking, but the back tacking on the elastic, they're just ones that I've kind of developed through sewing a lot of masks, just through trial and error, basically. So, it's all like little extra steps, but I think that they're important to make sure it's like strong, the best product I can have. So now I'm going to zigzag. So I'm putting it on my zigzag stitch. And I'm going to just do zigzag, and I'm going to just keep them all together on this chain. And I'm going to back tack because I don't want it to come apart. Okay, on to the next. Back tacking. Okay, back tacking. Okay, so they've been zigzagged, and now I'm going to cut them all apart carefully. Okay, so now the next step is to fold them right side out, like this. It's a little bit closer to being done. So this is the top, right? You can kind of see how it's coming together. This is a large, so it's like too big for me, but that's a good. Okay. Okay, these look great. Okay. So they're almost done. And what I'm going to do is get out my straps. I've made a bunch of straps here. You can make them however you like. These ones I've serged, and this is a pretty thick fabric, so it's pretty sturdy. You can also use twill tape or sort of bias tape, any kind of, if you have like jersey, you can cut it so it's like stretchy. It's up to you. These are just the ones I have. These are made out of shibori sateen, and I'm going to just take out a few. And the next step is to take the strap and put it inside like this. And then you sew along this edge here. So creating a little casing. So it's like a drawstring. You got to be careful you don't sew into this. And I also have a little pleat on the inside. So I like to make sure that is sewn down into the casing too. So I just do it like this. Lay it flat, smooth it out. Again, I'm going to back tack. And oh, I was on zigzag. Whoops. Good news is it was just one stitch, so it doesn't need a seam ripper. This comes right out. And I'm going to go forward and backwards carefully. It's thick, so I'm going to feed it in carefully. And it's thicker on one side than the other, so the foot is really working to move that fabric. So okay, so there it is. It's here. And so what I do for the edges here of these straps, I just tie them into a little knot. So that way they don't go through. And I'm going to do the other side. I like to trim this edge off so it's clean. Okay, now I'm going to do another one. On the other side. Okay. So again, I'm gonna just make sure it can go through. It does. That's great. And I'm going to make a knot, both sides. And I'm just going to trim this. All right, so it's almost done. The last thing you have to do is put a little tack onto the bottom of the mask. So I'm gonna kind of pull it to stretch the lining to be as close to the shell as possible. And then I'm going to line up the seams in the front and the back. So line up the seams. Okay. And I'm going to take it like that. And just kind of shape it. And I'm gonna just sew a little box from like here to here. So just a little box on this seam, bar tack it on both sides and sew along the seam to just reinforce it. So that's going to create the pocket for the inside where you can put the filter. So I'm going to go forward and backward. Okay, and I put my needle in right at the seam. And I'm going to go forward. And just kind of go slow and follow the line. There it is. And now I'm going forward and backwards again. Okay, so you can see the little box there. So that creates the inside pocket where you can put a tissue or a filter, a coffee filter, paper towel, something like that. It's up to you what you have. To add an extra layer. So that is the finished product. I'm just going to keep sewing the rest of these masks. I have a lot to do, so I will put the pattern for this mask in the about more of this video. I got it online and I scaled it up and down for the smalls and mediums and extra smalls. And then I also made an extra large just because, like, as I was making more masks, I found that everyone's face is so different, and it's really not a one size fits all kind of thing. So that's been my experience with the masks. And go to my website, onyxmatter.com, to see more of the masks. And also I have other things for sale there. And I also teach shibori workshops. So if you want to learn how to do indigo dyeing, I have those workshops. And then also follow me on Instagram for more shibori inspiration. And thanks so much for joining me. Have a good day. Bye.